And hello again. So this is a little video just showing a few of the things I've been messing around with recently. I got a PSTV a couple of weeks ago. That's what you're seeing on the screen now. Now the PSTV is quite hard to capture from with standard wires and stuff because it uses HDCP, which is the encryption to stop you from being able to copy the HDMI output that it has. The PS3 has the same thing as well. It was mainly designed to stop people copying DVDs, but unfortunately they've got it turned on all the time on the PS3 and on the PSTV. The PSTV, of course, is a kind of consoleized television version of a PlayStation Vita. So I've had to jump through a few hoops. I've currently got the PSTV plugged into an HDMI to component converter, just a cheap one that I bought for a few quid the other day. And then, so that's turning the signal from HDMI to component, and then it's going from component into the RetroTink 5X, which is turning it back into HDMI again. But this time, because it's going through an analog stage, the HDCP encryption's been stripped out of it. So now I've turned it back into HDMI and it's feeding into my capture device and it's recording okay. All that means is we're not getting the best picture quality possible, but it is the only way I can capture PSTV at the moment, so this is the best I can do. So I apologise for that. So as soon as I got the PSTV, it was completely stock. I modded it, which is very easy to do. You can get all the instructions online. It's very step-by-step guide on how to do it, and it all worked perfectly. And I've been testing the way to get the best performance of it for PSP games, which is the main thing I'm interested in playing. I have unfortunately found out that there is no perfect way to play PSP games without any lag, without any input lag. Unfortunately, the baked-in emulation that the PSTV uses, which was made by Sony and is what is used when you download PSP games from the PlayStation Network and what have you to play on the PSTV, it is not perfect. It looks perfect. Graphics and the colours and everything are absolutely fantastic, but there is a few frames of input lag, and it's enough, in my opinion, to spoil shmups, which is unfortunately my main interest in gaming. So I've had to go back to the drawing board, and I'm considering getting a PSP Go now, and I may or may not keep the PSTV because I'm not that bothered about playing actual Vita or PSTV games. Saying that though, there are some good ones. I have put some on here after having hacked it with Enkaku, knocking it back down to firmware 3.6. I've been able to put these games on, download them through various methods. Shovel Knight, that's very good. I have never actually, obviously I'm aware of that game, it's been around for years, but I've never played it before till the other day, and surprisingly good actually. Xenocrisis, that was that Mega Drive game that came out a couple of years ago. That's actually did have a port to the PlayStation Vita, which is pretty awesome. So I've got that on there as well. But this video is going to be about Salamander Portable. And one of the games included thereon. So these are bubbles that I installed myself using a system called Sign. Now I'm not going to go through all the boring details, but basically Sign is a way of installing PSP games onto your Vita and PSTV and allowing ISO images, that is, of the PSP discs, and making the Vita or PSTV see it as a downloaded PSP game, and works in exactly the same way as a PSP game that you may have downloaded off the PlayStation Network. And to cut a very long story short, the first thing you have to do to be able to do that is to download a real game off the PlayStation Network. So that's why I've got this Ape Quest on here. That's one of the ones that was recommended because it's completely free, and you can just download that onto the PlayStation Network, which is still accessible after you've hacked it with Henkaku, as long as you turn on all the stuff which hides your firmware version and what have you from PlayStation Network. It still works. So I downloaded Ape Quest for free, and then you use that as a kind of package. Use that to make packages, and then you can install the PSP games within the bubble that is created when you install Ape Quest, and you kind of duplicate that bubble, and you can inject whatever PSP game you like into it. So that is how I've installed these two here, Salamander Portable and Gradius Collection. Now there's another version of Gradius Collection on here which is installed via Adrenaline, which is another method, and you can go and look that up online. But the reason I've got these two different versions on ways of installing these games on here is I discovered that these two here, which is the Chovy sign, which is the method that uses Ape Quest as I just described, that gives you the best performance possible for PSP games, I think. Even though you do still get some input lag, it is slightly less than I feel when I'm playing the same games on using the Adrenaline method. So that's enough of my waffle. I'm going to go in and just have a little go on a game. So this is a PSP game that only came out in Japan from Konami, called Salamander Portable, and it's a very valuable item to collect now. I think it's worth over £100 now. I don't have a physical copy, so I do have a physical copy of the Gradius collection, which is getting up there in price a bit now, but I've had it for a while and it wasn't that much when I got it, thank God. So this was a compilation of Salamander games brought out for the PSP by Konami. And what we have on there is Salamander, is the first game available. Then Life Force, which is the alternate version of Salamander. They're both more or less the same game, but with a few slight differences in the graphics and sound, but the levels are basically the same. And these are the Salamander and Life Force are two different arcade versions that came out. Salamander, I believe, was primarily the Japanese name for the game. Life Force is what it was called in the US, mainly, and you got various combinations of those names in other countries in the arcade. Now this Salamander 2, which is about 10 years after the first Salamander, that came out in the arcade, and that's also on PS2 as well, on the Salamander collection on PS2. That's a good game. So that was all for the Salamander, really, because Salamander wasn't a huge franchise. Obviously it's a kind of spin-off from Gradius, but there's only ever officially 2 games of Salamander. So on this collection they've added a couple of other Konami games, one of them being ZX, which is just a unique horizontal scrolling shooter from Konami from around the late 80s, I believe, 89, something like that. And this is the one we're playing today. So this is Gradius 2, and this was originally brought out for the MSX. And I did the classic thing of pressing the wrong key to select the game there, because this is a Japanese game, so the selection keys are all swapped over. So it's circle to start Gradius 2. So this was a MSX game, which was a home computer that came out in the 80s, which you're probably aware of. It was very big in Japan and certain countries in Europe. It was never huge in the UK, but though I do believe various versions of it were attempted to be released in the UK, it didn't do very well here. And we get some extra settings that are just unique to this collection, and I'm just going to show you. Refine. Now this is the brilliant reason for playing this game on this particular collection called Salamander Portable, because it got rid of the horrible choppy scrolling, which is definitive of all MSX games with scrolling. It didn't do scrolling very well, and it was mostly very choppy, like it would move about an inch at a time on scrolling levels, horizontally scrolling levels, which was obviously very notable in shoot 'em ups, in horizontal shoot 'em ups. So Konami were very clever and put these options in original. So that's the choppy version, and refine. So I'm going to put it on the original just to show you how bad it actually is. It's not only the backgrounds which move in a choppy fashion, it's the enemies do as well. And you can see those weapon pickups are moving in a very jerky way as well after they've been revealed. We'll just go a bit further. So you can see there, pretty basic colour palette for an old 8-bit home computer, which is to be expected. Not too dissimilar to the Spectrum, the MSX, though it was slightly better at doing colours and slightly worse at doing scrolling. So that's the original graphic version of this MSX game, which is on this collection. Now I'm going to go to game setting. Put it on refine. Excuse me, it's a little frog in my throat there. We'll start the game again. And you'll notice the enemies and the backgrounds moving a lot nicer now. So as far as I know, this is the only time Konami have ever re-released this game with that improvement made in the scrolling. Now I think this game has been made available on one or two other Konami collections, but they just put it on them in the straight MSX graphics, colour palettes and scrolling, what have you, choppy scrolling. So also you can see here they've actually improved the colours of the background. They've added more colours to the characters, the enemy sprites and what have you. So this is a really unique way of playing this, what was originally an MSX game, looking much more improved and much more easy on the eye. And it is, to this point at least, only available on this very particular Salamander Portable collection for the PSP, which I suppose is one of the reasons why it's very expensive and collectible at the moment. And being a Konami game in the Gradius aka Nemesis series, it's hard as balls. And it starts as it means to go on right from the first level, as Konami games usually do, and Gradius games particularly. Now Nemesis and Gradius is basically the same thing. I believe that Nemesis, the name Nemesis, was used more in Japan, but I do seem to remember the original arcade machine of Gradius was ported in the UK, was ported to various home computers like the Spectrum as Nemesis. So it all gets very complicated. But the most interesting thing about this particular game, called Nemesis 2 on the MSX, is that it was only ever released originally on the MSX. It didn't get an arcade or console release. And that was around 1987, I think, when this was brought out on the MSX in Japan. And it then, about 3 years later or so, got released on the Sharp X68000 as Nemesis 90 Kai, I believe, and that was a remixed version of this, with far improved graphics, more so even than this one you're seeing at the moment for the special PSP version. Obviously the scrolling was fixed because the Sharp 68000 is a very powerful machine for its day, more powerful than PCs were, than IBM compatibles were at the time, and much better for games than they were at the time when it came out in the late 80s. So there's only ever been 2 original releases of this game on the MSX and the Sharp X68000, and it has appeared on 1 or 2 Konami retrospectives like this one since. So it's just a little bit of history about this game. It offers pretty standard gameplay you'd expect from an old school Gradius game, with the power up token system and the power up bar that progresses as you collect the tokens, and you choose when you want to upgrade, and you can choose which one you want to upgrade. And that's one of the things I really love about Gradius games. I love the power up system, I love the music, I love the graphics. They are definitely it's probably my favourite franchise of all time, so that's why I go out of my way so much to play all the different variations of the games that there are, and spend so flipping much on the hardware to do so. And immediate death on that stage 1 boss there. Oh dear. So we'll just play this for a couple more minutes. It's not an easy game. I think I've got to about stage 4 or so, but it takes me a long time. I don't think we're going to be getting anywhere near that far on this particular video. Now there was another MSX game made specifically for the MSX2, I believe, called Space Mambo, and that was a unique Konami horizontal shmup, quite similar to Gradius, and it's really great. Unfortunately, it was never, as far as I know, it's never been re-released anywhere, which is a great shame. It would be amazing if they had included it on this particular collection, but unfortunately they didn't, with the improved scrolling treatment and what have you, like they gave this one. It's a game that I'd like to make a video for someday. I can play it on the Mister, which has an MSX core which pretty much plays it perfectly. So maybe soon one day I'll get round to making a little video about that game as well. But that was Space Mambo, and this is Nemesis 2, and 2 very good reasons for me to try and get MSX games working. Being Konami shmups, being my favourite genre from one of my absolute favourite developers of all time. Can't go wrong, really. Oh, damn it. The MSX did have good music. For an 8-bit machine, it had a Yamaha AY sound chip, so it had a dedicated sound chip, which, even though its hardware was similar to a Spectrum with a Z80, it definitely had far better sound when it came out than the Spectrum did at the time that the MSX came out. Of course, the Spectrum 128K and Plus 2 then also adopted the Yamaha AY sound chip as well, which kind of brought them up to nearer to par with each other. But the music on this game is great. It's typical Gradius music quality on this game. I've picked up the laser upgrade there. Your standard Gradius style laser upgrade. And of course you get the old options on this game as well, which you have to collect quite a few tokens to get. And I died before I got to it. and I don't think I'm going to be improving on this session while I talk to you guys, so maybe we'll call that the end of this little video. So if you've got any questions about my setup or anything, or how I got this game working, then feel free to put them in on the video comments. And till next time, thanks for watching.